us to live in such a wonderful county and such a wonderful area of this country. We ask your guidance on our country, our leaders, our local leaders. Committee meeting. Do I have a
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is Academy Creek Clarifier Drive replacement. Mr. Burrs.
Yes, sir. We have 6 clarifiers at Academy Creek. Each one has a mechanical drive that rotates a set of rakes on the bottom of the clarifier and a skimmer arm at the top to push scum into a collector. We need to replace the clarifier drive $1.17. Given the amount of additional work required to rebuild in place, staff is recommending we purchase the complete assembly replacement. It has a shorter lead time than the parts at this point as well. So that'll allow us to get that clarifier back up and running in a shorter time frame, and including staff time to do the rehab for not substantially more money.
So to buy parts and rebuild turning, that doesn't count labor costs?
That doesn't count labor.
So really, it's probably a lot closer.
It's a lot closer than the $10,000, and then you've got potentially 4 to 6 weeks less time to get it back up and running.
What are we doing in downtime now?
Well, we have 6 clarifiers. We have 5 running right now, so one of them's not running. But as we approach the rainy season, we need additional clarifiers online.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the Facilities Committee recommends the full commission approve the purchase of a clarifier drive.
Good
We're going to have to rent a crane to install
All right,
it.
perfect, all right.
And we're going to be spending some more money on all the other clarifiers too pretty soon, right?
Yes, sir. So we've got some additional work needs to be done to the rest of the clarifiers. These replacements will be included in that project, but this one just needs to go now.
Okay.
Wait, so we're gonna turn around and replace it again?
Not this one,
No.
but I'm saying is we
We
were
would have-
planning to,
right, yeah.
but it just failed
Okay.
sooner than we expected.
When you're doing work on the other ones, you'll be including this part.
Exact same thing,
Okay,
exactly.
Got it, yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is Academy Creek Influent Pump Rehab. Mr. Burrs.
My memos got out of whack here. Okay, so the influent pump at Academy Creek, we have 4 influent pumps at Academy Creek. One of them has had some electrical issues, and we sent it off for a replacement or a rehab quote. Rehab quote came in at over $45,000 to rehab the pump. They are 125 horsepower pumps. Given the cost to rehab it, I requested staff get a cost to replace the pump. The replacement cost for the pump came in over $90,000. 5 to 7 weeks to repair the existing pump, and the new pump, they did not give a lead time, but based off of recent orders for smaller pumps, you're probably looking at 12 to 16 weeks to get this size pump back in place.
$1,736.
I'll second those questions, please.
Yes, sir.
There's a motion second. Questions?
How old is the pump?
Those pumps are 8 to 10 years old.
I would think we'd at least get 5 or 7. I mean, I would think a 125 horse pump would be a 20 to 30 year item. I mean,
Typically, what we
And then
use as
wastewater.
an estimate for wastewater pumps is 15 years, just because of the environment that they're
Yeah.
in. We use 15 years as an expected lifespan.
so these are outside.
These are close to outside their expected life, but we can get 3 to 5 years.
I mean,
with
these
the
are
rehab.
outside in the elements, or
They're in, well, at
Okay.
Academy, we haven't bought any new ones. And part of that's because of the VFDs that we installed also. We don't want to have to increase the VFD size that we just replaced, so that limits what we can go back with now from a horsepower perspective. And you can't buy 125 horsepower Yeoman's pumps anymore.
I guess my only point was, I mean, to me, rebuilding it certainly makes sense because the life
Right.
of something
Yeah.
like this is typically pretty lengthy.
Now, a water pump, we'll get 30 plus years out of a water pump, but a sewer pump, we get 15 years, we're doing pretty good.
I have a question. When the one was rebuilt a few years ago, were
Bases and everything that are down in the wet well and redo all the guide rails and everything
The
coming in.
frame's
The
different.
frame's different.
And this station is, we got 3 pumps, so it's designed for 2 of them to handle peak flow. And the third one,
Yes, sir. Typically, under normal flow, we usually run 1 pump. In a normal rain event, we might get to 2. And a third pump would be used in a significant event, and then a 4th pump would be for, shall we say, hurricane rain event, when we would need the 4th pump. But not having the pump in the hole does limit your flexibility to pull and maintain the other pumps.
now, as it relates to these pumps, Before, these pumps did not have a very good bar screen up ahead of them, and we replaced the bar screens. So they were having to pump a lot more rags back then. And also, we're doing some stuff on the grit collector, right? What are we doing there?
Grit system has been, we internally rehabbed the grip system. We didn't do grit system improvements during the project because we could not effectively inspect the grit system. Increases the friction and the torque that thing's seeing, so.
Now, these pumps are gonna be below the area where the odor control works.
That's correct. Each of the panels around the areas where the pumps are sitting are split, and they're manufactured so they can be lifted out, and then the pumps come out, and then you put the panels back.
So they'll still be exposed to the,
No, they're fully submerged, so the gases will sit between the water level and the cover, so they'll be submerged beneath the water level.
okay.
And this is not rewinding the motor, it's just the pump itself.
Just the pump itself.
The motor's fine.
Motor, it's my understanding, looking at the scope of work that the rehabber provided, did not need any rewinding.
And Southeast Pump's gonna do the work? Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is Arnold Road resurfacing, change order number 1, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Out at Pump Station 2002 on Arnold Road, near the intersection of Ocean Boulevard, staff installed approximately 1,000 feet of force main out there. And we awarded a contract in October of last year for the resurfacing to Allen Owens Construction. During the installation, we ran into a few unforeseen issues that slowed the time frame of the original project. There were some unknown utilities discovered that we had to reroute around, and then because of that, the trench varied in size and location throughout the existing roadway. When we got to milling the asphalt for installation in the trench, determined that there's approximately 6 to 8 inches of asphalt currently on Arnold Road after my suspicion is years of overlay of asphalt. Upon completion of the installation, Glynn County right-of-way coordinator went out and had some concerns about the scope of the proposed paving repairs that we originally awarded, which included milling to 2 inches and relaying 1.5 inches of 9.5 millimeter asphalt. Glynn County is now requiring Joint Water to mill the full depth of the existing asphalt, which is the 6 to 8 inches, and lay 1.5 inches of 12.5 millimeter asphalt topping instead. We got a quote from Allen Owens to perform the new scope of work, which was received at $124,500, which is an increase in the contract of $29,125. We do have sufficient funding in the project fund because we did the labor in-house to complete the project. And in order to facilitate this project being completed and the roadway being repaired for the community, staff is recommending we move forward with the change order as presented.
Do these unit costs align with what we've seen on other projects?
The unit cost does align on the previous one. Part of the reason the cost did not go up even more was we had assumed a certain amount of GAB was going to have to be brought to the site for doing this. The county is allowing us to mill the 6 to 8 inches and leave the milled asphalt in place of the GAB. So the quote only went up to $29,000 because we're not having to provide all the GAB.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve change order number 1 in the amount of $29,125 to Allen Owens Construction and Paving, Inc. for scope changes associated with the resurfacing of Arnold Road.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is dedications of private infrastructure and easements. Mr. Klein?
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Report pulled up here. These should be fairly straightforward. The first one is an infrastructure dedication for development known as Grace Crossing. Well, I guess I got to zoom in and then do this. I use my scroller bar. Here we go. Okay, Grace Crossing Phase 2A dedication and easement. Little easement included with this. It's off of Harry Diggers Boulevard. It's really in the same development as Carriage Gate, if you're familiar with that area there, kind of close to North Glynn Sports Complex. GIS map showing here, the yellow is showing we're talking about here, the infrastructure. the water and sewer infrastructure considered for dedication. And that is total, a little under 1,800 linear feet of water, valued at $85,000, and 1,500 feet of sewer, gravity sewer, valued at $108,000, plus the easement. Second item,
Can I ask a
Yes, sir.
question? So all the rest of the development has already been dedicated, right? Any parts of that?
correct.
Is this just the remaining areas, or there?
So, Commissioner, good question. So what, this is just the next phase of the development
Okay.
for Grace Crossing.
Right,
This other vacant area you see in here will be additional phases in the future.
okay,
So they'll continue this development in here. They planned it to begin with as all one project, and then they ended up breaking it up into smaller phases.
okay.
And everything you see that's shown here, what's visible as green, indicates already dedicated. That's Joint Water and Sewer Commission's infrastructure now. So
Okay,
this will be an extension of already existing infrastructure.
and so this is actually the newest part of the development, so it's
That's
all,
correct.
all new construction?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This property was formerly gonna be the next phase of Carriage Gate, but
Mm-hmm.
then the property changed hands, and it's now under this newer development, Grace Crossing.
Okay,
And they dedicate small pieces so they can go ahead and start building on lots.
Very, very familiar these days for us to see that. As soon as they can build out the smaller phases and plat them, it works. That's their developer's plans.
Do we know the contractor who put in those lines?
We do, I don't recall them right off hand here. I'll think of it here in a second. It's right on the tip of my mind.
But do we do inspection on those lines?
We do. So, Commissioner, we do. Our inspectors are there during the whole,
Hang on, the contractor had to sign it, didn't he?
maybe on the dedication doc. I don't know. It's generally engineering the
Engineer
applicant.
and the surveyor signed it.
Yeah, record,
General contractor or the
Yeah.
developer or the actual infrastructure? I mean,
Infrastructure contractor.
yeah, underground.
looks like solid rock did the work.
That's the.
That's the
developer.
developer. I think it's Doyce. I think,
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the
I
name
think
of
it
his,
was, yeah.
company. Yeah, but they've done work here before. This project, when they came back to do this, we hadn't seen them here in town in quite a while, but it was good to see them back. Correct, so everything is inspected to make sure it's installed, and the materials are per joint water standards, and then tested before anything is approved for acceptance.
And EPD's had to approve that also, right?
Yes, they have. So any extension to the public system, whether water or sewer, wastewater collection, that adds new connections has to be approved, either through by EPD or for, in Joint Water's case, we have delegated water review authority for the water. So we review that
And
in-house.
what do they pay for tap fees for those?
I think they went with 5/8 or were these 1-inch?
I suspect these are, most people are putting in 5/8 by 3/4 meters.
Yeah,
So if it's a 5/8 by 3/4, all told, the tap fee portion is $27.20, including the cost of a meter and the account, it's $3,665.
Is the individual homeowner gonna be paying that, or
The
the?
builder typically
builder
pays it.
Okay. So not the developer, but the builder.
If they're the same, it'll be, but typically they're different.
right. In this case, as soon as they developed, put the pipes in the ground, they were building homes.
Is there a pump station right there, also off on the left side of?
So, carriage gates, they gravity down to,
There at the bottom left,
yeah,
which number is
so
that?
4110,
Okay,
yeah, 4110 is on Harry Driggers.
okay, that's where it goes, the
Right,
pump station?
right, this is the closest pump station.
Okay,
down here.
right down there, I thought.
Utilizing the benefits of the completed SPOS.
Or here, yeah. Here's where it exits the development here via gravity.
I see,
This is this is a best case scenario where we had sufficient depth, or the developer had sufficient depth to gravity to our pump station.
okay,
Yeah, it's not always the case. Sometimes they have to have their own pump station within
right.
to pump it out to our system. But in this case, being a pump station, that's generally gonna be the lowest point of your collection system for that basin.
we're keeping everyone in line to do things the good way. Excellent.
Right. Okay. All right, moving along to the next one here is on, oh,
At this point, I mean, because sometimes the developers will do what they collect tap fees for additional lots and area. For this one, for example, if there's empty lots out there, look like there was one just on the map when you zoomed in. I mean, whoever does that, buys that lot in the future, they would have to do a separate tap fee.
that's right.
Y'all would come to us, there's no,
they have to pay from us because it's, connected to our system. Some developers buy all the taps up front. So you don't have to pay for a tap until you pull a building permit though.
That's right.
So if they're gonna sell lots to a builder, typically the builder will pay the tap fee when they pull the building permit.
sometimes we do a, unsolicited proposal,
Yes,
and they collect the tap fees for a certain amount of time,
Right.
but that's not the case.
that's not the case here. Yeah, well, even when that happens, we collect them and then reroute it to them. They still have to come to us.
Yeah, right, but in this case, we're not rerouting it, it's ours.
It's all ours.
Right. Okay, next item on the dedication item here is Island South Condominium Association. So in this case, the portion highlighted, this is just south of the airport, kind of close to Sandcastle Drive on St. Simons. Island South in this highlighted area.
This is where now, Todd?
So let me go to GIS, I'll zoom out a little bit here.
Todd is good. He got his handy bookmarks and everything. I just wrote it down.
So on St. Simons, on the south side of the airport, let me turn on the,
Get rid of the subdivision layer.
yeah, really. Yeah, I don't know where I've got that at. There it is. Clean up things a little bit here. Okay, so south end of the island down here, airport, and then Sandcastle area is kind of hidden down.
This is down Sky Lane.
Skyline, correct, there we go. Kind of the south side of the airport down here,
Right. That's Glen Visual Arts, and that's the Ridge Club.
right, let's see. Yeah, I just got myself lost here.
Go back to your bookmark.
Yeah, really. So south end of the runway, gets right here, and this is what we're talking about. So in this case, we already had a public water main running through an easement over on this side, and then it actually ran through a lot on this side. And the subdivision wanted this abandoned, pretty much. They petitioned the county for an abandonment.
Oh, this is the one we talked about several months ago.
Correct, right.
We had
So-
to approve the abandonment, and then now we gotta get the easement over the now abandoned right of way.
Yeah.
That's a new lot.
Yeah, we had to do the chicken and egg, so they had to have it fully abandoned through the Glynn County, and then easement dedicated to us.
So
From
this is the dedication of the easement.
That's it, yes, sir.
This is no longer Glenn County property, this is, so the residential development on the other side, or say residential, the actual housing development on the other side, we already have an easement on.
That's correct.
And we had an easement with Glenn County, but now Glenn County's dedicated and,
Actually, we never did have an easement. But
I was wondering why the easement didn't carry over.
part of the old cleanup of the old property
Okay.
records, stuff like this happens.
Yeah, it is a cleanup.
Is that a gravity sewer
Yes,
or water line?
It's a water
Water
line.
line.
So, yeah, so we popped through an easement over here. All right, and the last one here is a quit claim for pump station. It's on the northeast side of Pinova. And I'll show where that is here. Now, Joint Water was already owning and maintaining this station. This is to clean up the parcel, the property piece of it. It does serve a very small number of connections, basin. It's essentially this
That's 17 there, or what?
development. This is how, yes, Highway 17 here.
And that's that hotel that's got the U-Haul place right south of it.
That's it. Yes, sir.
I will point out, this does not accept the Pi Nova industrial flow. This is the domestic flow from those office buildings.
Okay.
They pump all their industrial from their own pump station,
From their
right?
own pump station they have inside.
Now, is this gonna be fee simple title on this? Because I see some right-of-ways in here and utility easements.
Let's see.
We're just talking about the property at the pump station, right?
That's right, yes, sir, and they are, let's see, that's a good question. They are quit claiming whatever interest they have in it to us.
Okay.
Which, yes, sir, we believe it should be decent.
Okay. And how many more of these we gotta get?
50 or 60?
Where do we start with?
In the 80s or 90s when we started.
We started with 120.
120, yeah, there's a lot of them.
Out of
We've made
160,
progress.
out of 160.
You're right, we've made a lot of progress. And this is why Mr. Klein is very diligent in getting the paperwork up front now, so we don't chase things down 30 years after the fact.
Okay. Can I have a motion for these?
We
I'll,
gotta go back to it, but
I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve and accept these projects with associated dedications and easements.
I'll second.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
So do we have an overall timetable or schedule for the other ones, or we just, how are we prioritizing those?
We meet on them and try to go through them. Part of the problem is we send people notices that, you know, we'd like them to dedicate that to us, but those people have no idea they even own the property, and
It is a slow and arduous process.
No, I get that, I mean, I'm not,
No,
like,
we-
pointing fingers asking the timetable, just,
Right now, well, I guess back at the beginning of the year, we changed the method through which we were doing this, and we decided to attack some low-hanging fruit, this being one of them. We're currently working with several other,
I think there's several of them that technically the city,
yeah, and there's, you know, we've already had 2 of these deeds from the city, at least 2, it may have been 3. I mean, excuse me, from the county. The city wants them all done at the same time.
which makes sense.
which
to
makes
me.
sense, yeah.
Right, so we have to get surveys, which we're doing in groups of 10 or so.
Who's doing the surveys?
It's a different group. We put out a proposal to do 10 or 12 at a time and get pricing back. Jackson's done some, Shoup's done some. It's whoever gives us the best combination of schedule and price at the time.
And once we get the surveys, we have to, review those and either make a property description and ask for revisions. With the ones with the county, we have to get with the county and make sure that this is what they, the property that they want to give us. Occasionally, minds get changed, and
I mean, have we considered just farming this out like to one vendor and saying, hey, you know, we want you to give us a surveyor for a year or 18 months to focus solely on this and just get it done?
This is not meant to be a smart aleck comment. Do you have somebody that can give us a survey for 18 months?
No, I mean, I'm asking.
Because we will gladly keep them
Yeah.
busy right now.
Well, that's what I'm
yeah,
asking, I mean, does it,
and it's not just, I mean, we've had some delays with the surveys. You know, when we bid it out and give it to them, we typically get them back on time for revisions, a little slower.
that's why I was asking if somebody could just almost do like a staff extension, I mean, cause I assume we can't just hire our own surveyor. So I mean, if somebody could do like if there was a firm that, you know, just said, hey, for next
We can
18
try to
months,
bundle them all together and see if we get a price for that.
or just an hourly, you know, just hey, for, you know, 18 months, a year, whatever you think it's gonna take, just lease us a surveyor, for lack of a better term, to work directly with us and, you know, take direction directly from.
I know a couple people that could perform the services, whether they're interested or not, what their workload is.
Just a thought, I'm not
Yeah,
saying do it.
But above and beyond the surveys, it takes, time to get
Yeah.
the owners to understand what the history was and
Mhm.
why they don't want to charge us for these and, and things like that, and following.
We voted on the motion, didn't
Yes.
we? Okay.
No, we didn't vote.
We
Okay,
won.
we got a motion and a second.
Oh, I
All in
thought we
favor?
voted on it.
No, I don't think we voted
All
on
in
it.
favor?
Janice is the official record. If she says no, we're
First
voting
I
against.
thought we voted on it, moved on.
Voted on it.
Okay. Next item is water, discussion section, water production report, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. So the month of February, the column on the left, the total water produced, it will be less because February's got 28 days in it, so keep that in mind. The averages on the right should be more similar to what you're used to seeing. Howard Coffin and Goodyear Park picked up a little bit more of the slack from Brunswick-Glynn over the past month, which is good because Brunswick-Glynn was running a little more than we wanted it to. That is the oldest well in the system, so we try to limit how much it has to run. You'll notice that Fletsey did not run at all. We were doing some maintenance to the ground storage tank there, cleaning out the bottom of the ground storage tank. And we have determined that there's an issue with the suction to the pumps coming out of that tank. That tank is an interesting setup. It's got 2 suction lines, one out of either side. So we're going through some trial and error trying to figure out which side's got the problem at this point.
So 2 suction lines are fed to 1 pump.
They feed to one common influent header. So we got an issue with one of them because the pumps keep losing prime. So we're going to valve off one side and then see if it loses prime, then valve off the other and see if it loses prime. This is the only well site that we have that has 2 suction lines out of one.
We've got as-built drawings on that.
No, sir. So that was put in by the Navy back when they owned the Glencoe, I'm assuming.
Very old, rectangular.
Yeah. So see some of the other ones kind of in line where they have been. Very similar water usage to where we were the month of January and December there, over 5 million gallons on the month, so per day. So the growth that we're seeing in our community, particularly in the North Mainland, is showing up in our water usage. So
There's a question, if I'm counting my zeros right, so Canal Road, this is just total water, not per day, but it's total water for the month.
yes.
So Canal Road is 5,000 gallons?
Canal Road currently does not have production capability. We go by once a month, turn it on. It doesn't actually go into the system.
Okay, that's
It is, so that's why that one's not running. Fletsey, it's not running because it was down, but Canal doesn't. We've got a current project under design that will convert that to a production well, which will
It's a
hopefully
fire
bring
well
that.
now, right? It's a fire well?
It's a fire well right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
okay.
not gonna fit, that EPD doesn't like that term, anymore. But
Oh,
it's a fire well that we turn
Okay.
on in the event that we need additional water usage for a firefighting situation. We can turn it on, but it doesn't have treatment capabilities.
extra water well.
Extra water well, yeah.
How's
I
that?
mean, it's been like that for basically a year. What's the long-term plan?
As soon as the designs are completed, we'll put it out for bid. We'll be adding a ground storage tank, treatment capacity, chlorine, phosphate, everything like that out there. Then it will bring online, which should really help out with the growth we're seeing out Harry Driggers. And then that should reduce some of the loads on some of the other wells that we've got.
So what's the capacity of a well like that?
It's 1,000 gallons a minute, so it's 1.5 million gallons a day.
Is that area about the same size as the Ridgewood area, or is it smaller?
It'll have more demand in the immediate area than Ridgewood did, because a lot of that area around Ridgewood, was developed a long time ago, so they're denser developments that are going in out there now.
Right, yeah.
But it'll have a similar benefit to the system when we bring it online,
'Cause I know
particularly.
we're gonna kind of model that with that
Right,
improvements.
and then when we get that done, and then the project to build the elevated storage tank at exit 42, once that gets online, then we'll change the tanks at which the wells pump to the elevated storage tank to try to balance the well usage out a little better.
That makes sense.
All right, on St. Simon's, you see 4-well system over there. We did have a little less usage at the airport and Mallory both actually have 2 wells on site. We have the standard well and what's called the remote well. Airport well had some inspection done to the well column. We do these periodically to make sure everything's in good shape, so it was down for a little bit of the month, but it was brought back online early on in the month. So, but 2.5 million gallons a day usage, which is lower than what we've been seeing, but if you compare it to this time last year, still higher than what we were seeing this time last year. So, obviously, January, February is probably the slowest time on the island all year, so we would expect that number to increase in the coming months, particularly as the spring breakers get here.
On the next month's report, can we have a map that shows where these wells are? And also a Google Earth picture of it or something that we can see, or a drone,
Sure.
so we can see what we're talking about?
Nice idea.
He can pull up the GIS maps now.
You wanna go to
St. Simons.
St. Simons?
But just add it next time. We can look at this one if you want to right now, but,
So we have a well site right there on the airport property. It's a blue building out there. It's got a ground storage tank. Excuse me. And the pump building and the high service pump building. There. The Mallory well is on Mallory,
By the garden center.
right there by the garden center. And then, the Hampton well is at the, far north end of the island. That was built in 2012, 2013, Todd?
That was 2015.
2015. And then the Harrington well is behind where our water distribution crews work out of on South Harrington.
The only elevated tank on the island is one in Mallard.
That's
Two.
called Demery, yes, sir. There are two, there's Demery and
Two.
Oglethorpe up by Marsh's Edge.
Right there at the traffic circle, just north of it.
So you got Demery tank right there across from Brockington, and then the Oglethorpe tank right there.
There's no well at the tank.
No well at the tank.
Okay, that's what-
Typically, our elevated tanks are not located at well
Right,
sites.
okay.
Ground storage tank at well sites,
That's
elevated.
what I meant,
tanks.
the only one that's a well and the tanker, yeah.
So, yes. This gives us some flexibility, having 4 wells, actually 6 wells with the 2 wells at Airport and Mallory. Gives us some flexibility to, like I said, pull the airport well down for the month, for a few days in the month to do some inspection, and no impacts on the system at all while we do that. So we have some flexibility there. And then at the South Mainland, we have 3 wells, and similar to what we were talking about at Canal, the exit 29 well is exactly the way the Canal Road well is. There's no treatment capacity there. It's just turned on in extreme need events. The SPLOST project that is currently, the engineering RFP has been released, will convert that to a production well as well. And then the other 2, we have Fancy Bluff, which is out there by Fancy Bluff Park on 17 when you're coming in. County did some clearing out there, so it's highly visible now. And then Old Brookman, which is out on further west in the county. If you're coming in on Highway 82, it's the first thing you really see once you get closer to town. So there's an elevated storage tank out there as well. But
How do we, I mean, do we have any graphs or anything, it'd be interesting to see if we don't, but do we have any graphs or anything that kind of track our trend line as percentage of water produced versus percentage of water sold?
we do an annual water audit to do that. What we don't,
I mean, theoretically, monthly, we know what we pumped out of the ground, and we can total up the meters, what went through the meters and sold, and we can calculate what we sold.
yes, sir. The problem with that, and once we get all the new meters installed, we'll be able to provide you with that report. The problem with the old meters that we have, we bill out, let's say, once every 30 days. It may not be exactly 30, maybe 32 days. We don't have data on what day of that billing period you use that water. And the
Right.
billing periods aren't January 1st to January 31st. It may be January 15th to February 15th. So when you pull that data, the only way to do it is to assume that if somebody used 4,000 gallons of water in a month, that they used an equivalent amount every single day, which obviously doesn't happen. And when you start adding all that together, when you put those on there, with the well readings are done daily, you'll end up with some days where it says, we didn't do this, but it says we sold more water than we pumped.
Right.
And the next day it says we're 20% short. And
So theoretically, the longer the time frame, the closer to accuracy.
yes, so that's exactly right. But once we have all the new meters installed, we'll have daily readings for all the meters, and we can compare them a lot.
So we could actually say, pick a day of the
Pick a
month and
day,
say,
I can
this
tell
is
you,
how much.
here's what the
Yeah.
water
Or
usage
period.
was. I can do a day, a week at that point,
Yeah.
and it's, okay, the island between these 4 wells produced 3.2 million gallons of water, and we sold 3.15 million gallons of water.
I got you. And theoretically, that's by district, I guess.
Yes, you can do that by district.
How are we measuring the water that comes out of the ground?
There are raw water and finished water meters at the well. There's raw water meters on the well site, on the well, and finished water meters on the high service pumps.
And even with that volume, they're accurate.
Within, I think within 3% is what they specify. We get them calibrated.
Right.
They're within 2.5%, 3%.
Cool.
But you don't, and that way you'll be able to really determine the water loss,
Right, and
much more
we've
accurately.
had a few conversations about this at different facilities meetings in the past, and it's just, I don't
Yeah,
wanna bring data in here that's junk.
no,
And-
no, it doesn't make sense.
Because that's gonna
Right.
cause more
Yeah.
problems than it's going to solve.
100%.
So we've got about 20,000 of our meters installed, so we're getting pretty close to being able, once those are all installed and everything's in the system, we can pull it up on there and literally by day say what the water usage is.
Have we ever looked at it on an annual basis, though? 'Cause that all spread it out.
Yeah, we do it at water audit every,
About what percentage of water do we sell, that we produce? Or
non-revenue water or unaccounted for water, unaccounted for is a, I don't remember what the number was. We can pull the numbers.
I completed the water audit a few weeks ago, and honestly, with that budget and cash and investments, I've got so many numbers in my head.
I'm just curious.
It's on the
percentage-wise,
list.
Under 10%.
Is that high? Wow. So we're producing a lot more water than we're selling.
Yes and no. Some of it is,
Fire,
some of it is flushing,
and some of it's fire,
some of it's fire, some of it's leaks in the system, some of it's metering inaccuracies.
right.
Also,
So-
bear in mind that the first 1,000 gallons is not billed.
First 1,000 gallons not billed, it's included in the base.
Right.
But it's going through the meter, you know you spend it.
Correct.
I mean, you know, might not build it, but I don't mean water sold necessarily from this perspective of dollars, but water that went out as billable, whether it was a lump sum or whether it was versus.
Understood. That's something that you need to take into consideration, because when we do those calculations, we have to remember that first 1,000 gallons is zero revenue. That it is, you're right, it's metered, but it's considered unbilled for the purposes of this report.
For that report, I got
Yes,
you.
sir.
I was just curious how much it was leaking and going to free sources. I mean, and candidly, I guess you'd be able to look at that and see whether somebody, siphoning the water off. I mean,
Yeah, but with that being said, if we open a hydrant up and flush it, we may flush it for 5 minutes. If it's running 1,000 gallons a minute, we'll use more water in 5 minutes than a residential customer using a month.
right.
But
And-
don't we estimate that when we're doing our flushing though?
We do, but it shows up as non-revenue water.
Because our water audits, we have to submit
Right.
to EPD yet.
Well, let me rephrase it then. When we say unrevenued, I mean unaccounted for.
Unaccounted for
I mean,
water
that's different.
unaccounted for is closer to 12-13%, something like that.
Yes, sir.
Y'all can get that number and.
Right, we can do it next month.
Absolutely.
So, it's,
I was just curious.
yeah, it's, obviously the goal would be 0, but I'd say anything under 10% would be, Commissioner Timsley, that'd be considered very strong,
Very, very
Very
much,
strong.
yeah.
so.
You know, it's funny, the other utility that I worked for before, that I was on the board, the accountant used to sit there every month and say, now, every percentage that water loss is equal to $100,000 in their system. I said, well, that's typical of an accountant, all he's looking at is the money, but, not the cause. And I think that was kind of interesting, so. But I have another question on water distribution. We have a lot of dead ends in our system?
We do, and that's part of the reason we also flush, is to make
Right.
sure that we don't have dead water sitting anywhere.
Right.
Our planning construction team, when we get new developments in, looks for ways to loop the system in so that we don't have these dead ends.
Right.
Sometimes that's just not practical to occur, and in those situations, we can install automatic flush valves.
Scour valve?
And so we set it up there, and then it's scheduled